It's 7 o'clock, so I'll call the meeting to order. Thank you all for venturing out on this cold night. Thought maybe with the power off, people wouldn't want to leave home. As usual, just want to alert you all that the recording is being made of tonight's proceedings. And we'll just start with the agenda. So the first item of business that's better. Okay. So the first order of business is adoption of the agenda. So you have before you the agenda. Are there any revisions? And if not, I'll accept a motion to adopt the agenda. Okay, Alan, seconder. Cleve. Okay, any discussion? All in favor? None opposed? Carried. The second item of business is the approval of the minutes, and we have two sets of minutes to look at tonight. The first set of minutes are from the October 19th special meeting. These are minutes of a special general meeting, so the board doesn't actually approve them. We simply endorse them because the landowners have to approve them, and that won't happen until the annual general meeting in April. So if there are no errors or omissions, I ask for a motion to endorse these minutes. I'll make that motion. Anne? Bruce, seconder. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. The second set of minutes that we have are the minutes from the last board meeting in October. Sorry, this is just not cooperating. Okay. So October 19th regular board meeting minutes that you have. Are there any errors or omissions in those? Okay, I'll have a motion then to accept them as circulated. Please. Alan? Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay, now we move on to business arising and some reports from some of the in-camera meetings that we've had this past month. The first item to bring forward from the last meeting is the honoraria committee. We announced that because Alan had been elected, we were down to one person on that committee. Joe Lidster and Bob Leary have volunteered to be on that committee, so they'll be joining Brenda Bitton. And Ruth will be in contact with that group shortly to get them started on their task. The other thing arising from last month's meeting is the strategic plan that you've now had an opportunity to review. There is one suggested amendment that I'd like to make, and that's on page 7 under critical issues. I propose that we add an item that says, secure a full and unencumbered title to the old school property. That was not an issue on the horizon in August when we developed the strategic plan, and it's certainly a critical issue that will require some resources, so it should be added. Are there any other changes that you would propose we make to the strategic plan? Okay, if not, I'd like a motion to accept it as amended.
I'll make a motion to accept the strategic plan as presented.
Okay, a seconder. I'll second it. Anne? Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, carried. So previously, as a group, we had discussed putting the strategic plan on the big website. So when you have some time to do that, Ruth, we ask that you put that on the website. Now, the other thing that I want to report are the 3 in-camera meetings that we've had in November. We're starting to get to know each other very well. We had an in-camera meeting October 31st, again on November the 4th, and then again on November the 7th. And all 3 of these meetings were to deal with personnel and legal issues. So, because we talked about the same issue in more than one meeting rather than reporting by meeting date, I'll kind of cover the topics that we discussed. So the first thing that we dealt with were a number of personnel issues. And I've got 6 of them. First of all, we did make an appointment to the Public Works Committee, and Cleve will tell you a bit more about that in his report. Secondly, we discussed the performance appraisal of the fire chief. The board was initially under the impression that the fire chief's contract was for a 1-year term. However, we now know that it is a 3-year contract. So rather than dealing with contract issues, we were simply dealing with a performance appraisal. The actual appraisal process will be handled by the administrator. The other issue that we dealt with was that we reviewed a draft probationary performance appraisal for the administrator. As in the recruitment process, Bruce recused himself from all of the discussion about this issue and any decisions that we made because they have a long-standing friendship. So now that the probationary period is over, I, as the chair, will be meeting with Ruth to go over the performance appraisal. We also met to review the relationship and responsibilities of the board, the various standing committees, and the administrator. And what has happened is that when UBIT was without an administrator, the trustees became involved in a number of day-to-day activities. As Ruth becomes more established in her role, the board will begin to back out of some of those day-to-day responsibilities and more appropriately hand them back to the administration where they belong. As we move forward, there will no doubt be other periods when we will need to make adjustments as we kind of sort through this relationship and get things back to running the way that it should be. Final thing that we dealt with was that we've also appointed our newest trustee, Alan Webb, as a liaison between UBID and KIP regarding the technical matters for the water plant. Our discussion included developing terms of reference for his role, and that will be communicated formally to Brian, although he already knows about it. But you'll hear more about the kinds of things that Alan has been doing later on in the meeting tonight. And we also discussed a whole bunch of legal issues. I've got 3 of them. So the first one is that we're nearing completion of UBID's response to the Ombudsperson's letter, which was that 15-page letter that we talked about before. We have just a couple of things to finalize, and then that letter will be sent off to him shortly. Our understanding is that this will likely allow him to then complete the investigation and to issue his final report. So we're hoping that that's the case and that there are no further need for him to gather information or clarify things with us. The other thing that we did was that we have sent a letter to the CVRD stating that we do not intend to transfer the UBID water licenses to the CVRD as contained in the CVRD KIP Master Development Agreement. This issue dates back to 2007, when the Ministry of Community and the CVRD began discussing the transfer of our water licenses as part of the regional water system. Over the years, there's been no specific response from UBID, although I understand that there has never been a willingness within previous boards to comply with that request. Transferring the water licenses to the CVRD would mean that Union Bay would have to pay for bulk water from Langley Lake in addition to the distribution charges that landowners currently pay. Since May, when the CVRD again asked UBID to address this issue, the board has been investigating the implications, consulting with landowners, and clarifying the government's position. Because, of course, since 2007, a lot of the players have changed. We do not believe that it is in Union Bay's interest to transfer this water license. This decision, however, has implications for the KIP development. The Master Development Agreement says that Kensington cannot apply for building permits until we meet a number of conditions, and one of those conditions is transferring the water license. So, where we're at now is that we have formally and officially stated our position, and we're currently working with the CVRD, government, and Kensington to address the issue without delaying the KIP project. Our position is that this, in our view, this is a jurisdiction issue, and we do not believe that a jurisdictional issue between local governments should impact the development. So that's kind of the position that we're taking on this. We don't know yet how quickly we're going to be able to resolve this issue. The final issue that we dealt with is the ongoing litigation issue with the remaining plaintiffs. Although we've withdrawn from the issue with the remaining plaintiffs, and we've withdrawn as a plaintiff ourselves, we are still tied to the 8 individuals who are involved. Because this is such a complex and sensitive issue, we have been waiting for a comprehensive legal opinion regarding our options, the potential costs and risks, and various strategies to address them. The board is very aware of the interest in the community regarding this matter. And almost everyone has an opinion, whether it's support for the original action, or anger, or wanting to get our money back, or suing the plaintiffs, or charging the former trustees. Every one of these options has associated implications, costs, and impacts for our community. They are not easy decisions for the board, let me tell you. At this point, I can't tell you what we will do, but I can assure you that every trustee is dedicating considerable time and effort to make decisions that he or she feels will best benefit the community. And we've begun to make some decisions. Hopefully by the December 3rd meeting, we'll be able to tell you more about that. So those are the issues that we dealt with in those 3 meetings. We'll move on to the next item, which is correspondence. We have no correspondence to deal with this month. then we can move into reports. So we'll start off with Ruth. Can you give us an administration report?
Hi. My report tonight is going to focus on finances because tonight we will be setting our budget for 2012. We've tried to be conservative in our approach this year, both with respect to revenues and expenditure. We have used the same basic assumption as in previous years that we can expect to have about 700 active accounts in 2012. We haven't made any assumptions about growth at all. And one of the best ways to understand a budget is to compare it to previous year's budgets and to actual in the current year and the recent past. When you look at our expected revenues for this year, we anticipate $830,000 and change. This is less than the budgeted revenue for either of the past 2 years. And this reduction in budgeted revenue comes about for 2 reasons. Firstly, for at least the past 2 years and possibly longer, we've been overstating revenues by including amounts in revenue that weren't really revenue. There were amounts which appear on our revenue statement which were called transfers from reserves. And often people who aren't accountants confuse what is revenue and what is cash on hand or cash flow. And that appears to be what happened in this case. So what would happen is we would receive revenue in a previous period, a previous year. We'd put it into our capital reserve funds, and then in subsequent years it was brought back onto our budgets as though it was an income item, when in fact it was a transfer out of our savings. So it wasn't new money to us at all. It was just taking, not income, but taking out of savings. And then the second reason we've overstated revenues for at least a couple of years is that we've overestimated some forms of revenue. The amount estimated for rental income was about twice what we actually do bring in the past couple of years. And our water tolls are not as high as they've been estimated to be. So in this year's budget, we've reduced the rental estimate by $12,000. And before attending the meeting tonight, I looked at our water tolls for 2011. And while we've made budget estimates over the past 2 years of, in 2010, $235,000 in water tolls, and then in 2011, a reduction to $216,000 in water tolls. In fact, in 2011, our water tolls so far are $204,000. We've gone through all of our billing cycles this year, except for the excess water consumption that still needs to be billed for November and December. And we average about $6,000 in excess consumption revenues each billing period. So the reality is that in 2011, we probably overestimated our water tolls by at least $6,000. And I'm told that the push to conserve water has meant that people are using less water now than they did in the past. And this means that we have less revenue than anticipated from this income source. Our real total revenue for 2011 will probably end up at around $815,000, which is about $25,000 less than was budgeted for at the end of last year. We've found a couple of ways to incrementally increase revenues for 2012 with a view to trying to maintain a status quo budget, and you will hear more about that when the budget bylaws are passed. What we're seeking to do is to close the gap between what we've budgeted for the year and what our actual revenues will be, and we expect that actual revenues for 2012 will be much closer to the budgeted amount than it was in the past couple of years. With respect to 2012 expenditures, we've budgeted in the operational and admin portion of the budget approximately $81,000 less expense than we did for 2011. And most of these expense reductions come from a significant reduction, at least we expect it to be, in legal fees and accounting budget items, as well as expected savings in administrative salaries, primarily because I am hired part-time as opposed to full-time. So about 94% of the total expected expense reduction is coming from the administrative side of things, and the remaining 6% reduction is coming out of the operational areas where we've identified that we overestimated costs in the past. So this year we've reduced those budget items slightly. We discussed these changes with the department heads, and they were in agreement that those budget reductions were workable. On the expenditure side this year, we are mostly under budget in most areas with the exception of the legal fees, accounting fees, and administrative salary side in other areas suggest that we've made realistic estimates of what our expenditure should be for next year. And this budget, with those reductions on the expenditure side, plans to put aside $155,000 into our capital reserve funds in 2012. And over the past couple of years, very little was put aside for capital reserve and replacement, and our capital funds are not anywhere near where they should be. So if we can stay on this track for the next several years, we can put ourselves on a much more solid financial footing with the ability to replace some of our aging infrastructure. That concludes my report, and I think we need a motion to accept the budget as presented. Correct?
Yes, we do, but we'll deal with that.
As part of the bylaws?
Yeah. Could I have a motion to accept Bruce's report for information?
I'll make that one.
Ann, seconder. Alan. Any discussion or questions? Okay. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Bruce. Can you give us a bit of a financial report on the financial statements for this month?
A lot of it is redundant, but we have a statement up to the end of October, and our revenues to the end of October are just over $800,000. And our expenditures to date are $663,000, but that includes all those excess, as I say, costs for legal, accounting, and additional administrative costs because of the duplication at various times we had in the year of 2 administrators and things like that. So, in fact, in most areas we're under budget or on track, and we look like we're going to come in without any significant overages for the year.
I have a motion to accept the financial report.
Second.
Bruce? Oh. Okay, Alan, and then Bruce seconded. Okay. Any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, Ann, would you like to talk about the fire committee?
Yes. The last fire rescue committee meeting was held on November 1st. In attendance were myself, Fire Chief Mark Jackson, Ian Hamm, and Hein Vandenberg, and trustees Carol Molstead, Bruce Litzy, Keith Goldswain, Alan Webb, and Administrator Ruth Sauter. Gordon McDonald has resigned from the committee, and Bill Alcock attended as a guest. The fire chief's report stated that the department responded to 8 incidents since the last report. They included 5 first responders, 2 illegal burning complaints, and 1 chimney fire. In my last report, I indicated that we would be dealing with needed drainage repairs on the existing fire hall. At the October 19th board meeting, I put forth 2 motions to deal with these repairs. They were passed and carried forward to the committee. Bill Alcock presented drawings and recommendations to the committee to do the repairs, which were then discussed. The administrator requested that a budget be drawn up for materials and machinery rental. This has now been done and approved. And Bill has offered to volunteer his time and expertise, and he has put together a group of volunteers to assist him with the project. The Public Works Department will also be assisting with the work, and hopefully the repairs will be completed by the end of this month. And that concludes my report.
I have a motion to accept the report for information.
I'll make the motion.
Bruce, seconder.
Second.
Steve, any questions at all or discussion for him? All in favor? Carried. Okay, Cleve, Public Works report.
Okay. This is a Public Works report from the 3rd of November. And before I give the Public Works report, I want to welcome Bob Leary to the Public Works Committee. Bob volunteered to fill the vacancy created by the election of Alan Webb to the Board of Trustees. I've known Bob for over 20 years. In that time we've been both customer and client to each other. And Bob is a practical, no-nonsense guy with both feet on the ground. And he will be a valuable asset to the Public Works Committee. So, welcome, Bob.
Thank you.
Superintendent Dan reported that the water distribution is running well. All quality indices are well within limits and normal for this time of the year. The automatic flush valve discharge rates have been adjusted upwards to compensate for the seasonally lower demands. Dan is monitoring the flow over the spillway. There's an overflow as of the 3rd of approximately 3/4 of an inch, which translates to about 500,000 gallons a day. This information will be needed to complete the proposed hydrological study. At the time of the report, there was very little surface flow into the dam or into the lake. And given the rise in the water level, this gives an indication of significant subsurface ground water flow into the lake. Dan also reported on a broken pipe at the foot of the dam. And this is part of the old supply system and no longer in use. As it's leaking a significant volume of water, this will need attention. Dan is still working on his to-do list. The remaining jobs are all small items and none of them urgent. At this time, there are no major projects planned for 2012. On October 25th, Brian McMahon and 2 engineers from Corex and David Knight attended a public works meeting to introduce the Corex dissolved air filtration system. They put on a visual presentation and explained the detailed operation of the system. The committee members would like to visit 2 operating Corex systems and talk with their operators. These systems operate under conditions similar to ours and located in Telegram Cove and Cove Harbour. Arrangements for the trip will be made shortly. And what I left out of there is that when that happens, Superintendent Dan will go on that trip as well. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Cleve. We have a motion to accept the report for information.
I'll make that motion.
Anne, seconder. Alan, excuse me. Any questions at all for Cleve or discussion? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Bruce, Finance and Capital Planning Committee.
Yeah, we met last month. There was no new business or recommendations were brought forward to the board from our last meeting, so there's really nothing to report this month. Thanks very much.
Can we have a motion to accept that for information?
Sure.
Seconder.
I'll second it.
Yeah, okay. Probably no questions either. All in favor? Carried. And the last report is mine for the Bylaws, Policies, and Procedures Committee. We had a meeting in October, and June Hayner and John Whitman are the 2 community representatives who were there, along with all of the board except Ruth was not there. We're still working on the policies for the governance section of the policy manual, and the meeting that we had in October dealt primarily with a conflict of interest policy. So you'll hear a little bit more about that later when we get to new business. But we're basically still working away on our package that we'll be moving forward in the new year. So could I have a motion to accept the report for information? Seconder. And from Cleve? Okay, Cleve. Any questions, discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay, so that takes us forward into new business. And the first item of new business is the 2012 budget. So the board, you have before you the budget that we've been working on for a while. Do you want to say anything more about this budget, Bruce?
I don't think so, unless there's any questions. But we've gone through it many times.
Yes. Okay. Then I'll have a motion to budget as circulated. Okay, Ann, seconder. Cleve, any discussion?
Lots of discussion already.
I think just for the audience, just to let you know that this budget does include a $10 increase to the parcel taxes for 2012, and it may result in a small increase in your property taxes because we're trying to balance two specific categories within that portion of the budget. So all in favor? Carried. Now we have to approve a couple of bylaws relating to the budget. So the first one is bylaw 238, called Fire Protection and Street Lighting. This is a bylaw that essentially allows the provincial government to calculate your property taxes based on the budget that we submit to them. And it's the same format every year. We just plug in different numbers. So we're asking for a sum of $406,200 for the Fire Protection and Street Lighting Department. And I have to read it twice because it's a bylaw. So having introduced and read this bylaw the first time, can I have a motion to accept it? Bruce?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay. Seconder? Ellen? Okay. Any questions or discussion?
Yeah, the 406,000, is that higher than last year?
It's approximately 1% increase, about $4,000 more than last year.
And that's because of the street lighting category, which is not self-sustaining based on the amounts from last year, and the building category, which was not self-sustaining. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor? Okay, and we get to do it again. So we'll introduce bylaw 238 for second reading, asking for $406,200 for street lighting and the fire department. Can I have a motion to accept for second reading and to finally pass this bylaw? Anne, seconder, Cleve. Any other discussion? All in favor? Carried. We get to do it again. The second bylaw is bylaw number 239. It's titled Taxation Bylaw, and it relates to parcel taxes. So this reflects the $10 increase from $250 a year to $260 a year. And it would be divided into two installments of $130 each, as usual. So, can I have a motion for first reading of taxation bylaw number 239? Accepted.
I'll make that motion.
Seconder? Alan? Any questions or discussion?
I'd like to bring up the fact that I don't think that $10 is enough of an increase. I think that'll just be not my position. I think that'll put maybe $6,000 or $7,000 into our coffers. And I'd like to have a discussion regarding increasing that a little bit higher. My first thought on that was to bring it up maybe to $50. And talking to some members of the community, they agree with me. We have to start saving money somewhere. Others have said $25. I feel that $50 will get us going, and I feel that if we keep it any less than that, we won't not being honest with the taxpayers. So, how's everybody else feel?
Well, I oppose any tax increase. I certainly won't go along with $50. The $10 one is against my principles, but I can live with $10. I feel we pay more than sufficient taxes in this area. We pay higher taxes in a lot of areas, comparable areas, and even a lot of city areas. And I just don't see why we should burden every one of our taxpayers in this area with large increases like that. If we could put a stop to some of the frivolous spending that's gone on over the last couple of years, that will go a long way to compensating for any tax increase. So I'll support $10. I'll put my hand up. $50 gets it done.
Any other comments?
Well, I think it's prudent that we are starting to save some money towards the things that we have to do, such as the fire department.
Can you speak up, please?
I think it's prudent that we start collecting some money for something like the fire department, which needs a new building. Obviously, we can't build it for a while, but the earlier we put money in the bank, the easier it's going to be further down the way. But as Cleve indicates, $50 might be too much for people to buy into. Maybe we saw it in the middle and it's about 25.
I didn't think this was going to be a bargaining session. It says 260 here, I'll go with that. I won't go with anything else.
Bruce, do you want to say?
No, just that the parcel tax does not apply to the fire department, so that it's only for public works infrastructure. So there's, unfortunately, by raising parcel tax does not go to the fire department, it's strictly for public works.
It's for infrastructure, for our aging infrastructure, which is now 50 years old.
So I think when we had some of our discussions, part of the rationale that we had for coming up with $10 was that we felt that it would be worth sending a message to the community that we needed to start saving. But because we don't have a comprehensive capital plan that can spell out exactly what we're saving for, we thought that we should keep it quite small for this year, recognizing that in subsequent years it may be different.
How about we start at $10 as a flat rate, and anybody who wants to increase it, feel free to increase it what you like. Obviously you won't get one taker on that.
So are there any other comments before we deal with this motion?
Well, I'm just concerned that taxpayers will be hit with very large increases if we do have a big repair bill in aging infrastructure once again. So I have a little concern about that, but consensus wins.
So we have a motion on the floor right now to accept this bylaw that is an increase of $10 and taking our parcel taxes from $250 to $260. All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? None. Okay. Carried. So we have to do it again. So reconsidering this motion and making a second motion to accept an increase in parcel taxes of $10 to $260 per year.
I'll make that motion.
Cleve, seconder, Alan. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, carried. Thank you. Okay. So then, the next issue is a request to the Finance and Capital Planning and any discussion. Maybe just again for the talk about what this is all about is that we currently have a report from McElhaney, who are the engineers, who have identified all of the old water pipes that we have in Union Bay, and they've laid out a plan for how we should be replacing them and how much money we should be collecting and that kind of thing. That plan from McElhaney has not been implemented, and money has not been set aside as was recommended from the engineers. We're talking about something more comprehensive than just looking at water pipes. We're talking about other infrastructure like replacing trucks that will eventually wear out. We're talking about water pipes. We're talking about potentially changing the metering system so that it's more automated. And we could potentially be talking about a purple pipe system, which is kind of the new thing apparently in water systems, where untreated water is also piped to individual properties. So this is specifically to deal with the waterworks system, and it's to look at a whole range of issues, including coordinating some of our efforts with whatever work Kensington will be doing as they're installing a waterworks system. Okay. The fire department and fire capital planning process will begin later. This is simply for the waterworks system. So are there any questions or discussion from my colleagues?
Well, I think it's a good idea that the two combine, because one affects the other quite strongly as far as the public works needs the money, and the finance department has to be involved in how that money is obtained and spent. So I think it's a good idea to be doing this.
Bruce will find the money, we will spend it.
Well, as we said at one of our discussions, you thought you needed to put a plan together, then assuming that Kent was going to go forward, and another one assuming that they won't, because we don't know. We're trying, we don't know. Yeah. So I think that's a good idea too.
Okay. Okay. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. The next item of business is a recommendation arising out of our bylaws, policies, and procedures committee. We did develop a conflict of interest policy, but because the legislation is so thin regarding conflict of interest for improvement districts, we felt that we needed to get a legal opinion on this policy just to make sure that we're doing things that we're legally allowed to do. So I would like a motion to request a legal opinion on the draft conflict of interest policy.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Please. Seconder. Cleve. Any discussion?
How much is this legal opinion going to cost us? Any ideas yet?
Do you have any sense, Ruth?
Well, from what I understand, you want to simply provide the lawyer with the actual policy. He'll review it, ensure that it's compliant with laws. It shouldn't be an expensive item. I would think no more than a few $100, possibly a little more than that.
I think the problem is that there is no legislation governing improvement districts. So we've developed a policy that has a number of expectations and kind of, I don't want to use the word sanctions, but kind of actions that can be taken in conflict kind of situations. But we need to make sure that legally we're allowed to do that.
Could we borrow from the Community Charter or the Government Act? But we
So
can adopt.
we've
sections.
adopted sections of it, yes, but we just need to make sure that it'll stand up legally if we have a problem. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Okay.
Carried, thank you. Any chimney brushes, Ben, would you like to talk about this issue and then make a motion on how?
Yeah, okay. The Union Bay Garage has been handling the lending out of chimney brushes over the last 23 years, and I guess they don't want to do it anymore, so they've asked you that if they would take on the job. And I think everybody has heard of that service that they offer, and that is they keep chimney brushes at the garage, and then they lend them out to people as long as 2 weeks to clean the chimneys, and they bring them back, and we hope to get them back in good condition. So we really appreciate that they've done that for that long. But since they've asked us to take it over, we have to go through a process, and that is that the board has discussed it. We feel that the fire department should be approached to see if they'd be willing to do it. And to that end, I'm going to make a motion. And that is that the issue be referred to the administrator and the fire chief to determine whether this activity comes within UBID's stated purposes, and to investigate whether there could be potential liability issues arising out of taking on this activity, and then to report back to the board with recommendations regarding the same.
Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Bruce, discussion?
I'm just laughing and I just don't see what the big deal about it is. Ever since I had the place, things stood behind the door. Somebody wanted them, they came and took them.
Yep.
Why can't the same deal be worked out with fire departments? After all, it's their damn brushes. Let them just keep it down, people don't get it there.
It would be nice if it was that simple, wouldn't it? I agree. But we have to do the process.
I just don't know why it's such a big deal. Do you pay out? Damn brushes are there.
I guess it would be a big deal if somebody sued us.
What's that?
It would be a big deal if somebody sued us, so we're trying to get past that.
What any liability comes, that only comes if it falls off the roof.
Hopefully, anyway.
Yeah. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, carried. The next item is up to you, Alan, to talk about the water treatment plant.
Let me give you an introduction.
I think you need this.
I need this. Okay. Okay. To start, to give you a little bit of introduction, which is not scripted as such. As a result of my experience running water plants on the wastewater side, they asked me on the committee to review this and to be involved with Corex and KIP in terms of the water plant. So the method I elected to do was to phone 6 users across the country, from Nova Scotia to Alberta to British Columbia, and solicit the opinions of operators who operate these plants, sometimes for a long period of time, sometimes for a short period of time. So out of that, I formulated a report, and I'll read it to you. The appendices you won't get because they're about 8-10 pages long. So the objective was to provide Kensington Islands property with a release to start the detailed design of the Stage 1 water treatment plant for Union Bay District, per the water agreement that exists between the two parties. This release will be based on UBID Public Works conducting a technical review of the process. The methodology used: review of information provided by Corex engineers and via KIP and directly to UBID. They supplied me with a list of users. Corex supplied me a list of users. And so from that list I picked random people who are similar size and similar conditions to our own. Conduct telephone surveys with Corex users. prepare a risk assessment for COREX to comment on, and finalise the risk assessment based on COREX response. Prepare a summary of recommendations. The results. COREX engineer John Tallers provided a user list, appendices 1, as a start for contacts. In addition, he provided an operating cost list, appendices 2, which included the electrical power requirements and typical chemical consumption. Contact was made with the 6 users, and information, their opinions were sought on the operation of the Danforth water treatment systems, and they were operating for supplying water to their respective towns. Overall, the response was very encouraging, with users being very satisfied with the unit's operation. Length of time of operation for an installation varied between 3 to 11 years, with in-feed supplies ranging from relatively stable Telegraph Pole, Cove, Coal Harbour, Pine Creek, lake water, to variable river water, Port Hardy and Bassano. Water pH varied from 4.5 to 8.5 in different units. And the incoming pH very much governed the chemical treatment that they were using to settle the water down. The colour varied, the colour of the water, which is an equivalent of a weak tea to a very strong tea, varied between 3 to 500 units. I didn't follow up with the Kamloops people, as I only had an installation engineer from Stantec to contact there, and he was not the operator. It became clear from discussions that the big issue of operating this equipment is the turbidity and the variability of the incoming water, and managing the changes that can happen with the colour and turbidity from runoff, Port Hardy or the wind-exposed ponds of Bassano. Nearly all the users experienced minor issues on startup. This is basically where you have to tune in the chemistry to the incoming water. The users were very satisfied with the units after a few months' operation. Some of the older design units had some issues which resolved promptly. To my understanding, these designs have been updated to move away from those issues. Maintenance is figured as a high priority. The effects of negative neglect were outlined to me by an operator at Bassano, where he had taken over a plant after a period of limited maintenance being conducted on the plant. So that's the discussion with the various users. Then I went on to review the usage. Kipper is offering a 350-gallon a minute unit. And what I did, I compared that to flows that our maximum flows in the summer, which is about 230 gallons a minute. I worked very closely with Dan on this information. The winter flow being about 100 gallons a minute. I then went through a formula which showed that we use about 0.38333 gallons per minute per connection. And so what I did, I then extrapolated that to the next 250 houses, which took us to 850 houses. That showed a potential demand of 325 gallons per minute, which is inside the capacity of the 350 which they're offering us. And this is for summer only. Now it also ignores the fact that the next 250 houses will be water efficient. As Carol mentioned earlier on, there's the alternative sprinkling pipe systems which are non-treated water. So I expect the usage to be down, so our reserve capacity may be even a little better than what I stated, but that's all I can work on right now. So I said we better have enough capacity in the next 250 connections with some reserve capacity. Then what I did was look at and formulated sort of a strategy in terms of how long we could afford to have any one piece of this equipment go down. And it's not essential that everything runs all the time, because not everything's happening all the time. So that's why my risk analysis I went through the risk analysis. So I go from the script I have here. The highest risk will be in the late summer, when the reservoirs hold approximately 2 days supply, not taking into account very high firefighting demand, which is unpredictable. When this does not happen very often, but it has to be considered. Lowest risk is winter, when the reservoirs hold approximately 5 days supply for normal usage. The downside is we have a major demand due to high usage and a major fire. We'd have to go to bypass for the treatment plant, on the treatment plant. We have to, at that stage, issue a boil water advisory. Based on this data, I feel that we need to establish a minimum downtime time at this point. I feel that it would be prudent to set this at 6 hours at full flow or 12 hours at, say, full flow of 50% flow. From these assumptions, I drew up the risk review and sent it to Corex for review. The response was made by James Yap, who is their senior engineer, and he basically concurred with a lot of the assumptions that I made, and it indicated to me that I wasn't fully aware of some of the operational aspects of the plant. There were assumptions made. So anyway, we got to that, and he gave a good report, which is listed in the report. So I came to recommendations. In order that UBID can move forward and allow KIP to start designing the facility, I would propose that we accept the proposal for the Corex DAF 350 gallons single train twin filter. The following items be listed below. A generator, 600 volt, 3-phase, minimum kilowatt for the basic plant, less the backwash pumps. The backwash pumps only have to operate once a day, and chances are we could be able to survive that because we have 2 filters. So I don't see that as being a problem. I said auto start as an option. I don't think it's essential because if the power goes out like it did, the plant would go like tonight. If it went down for half an hour, it wouldn't be detrimental. But if it was down for 4 or 5 hours because of a major power outage, we'd have a problem. So that's why the generator is lifted. The spare parts listed as outlined by James Yap's email included. The UBID Public Works Committee visited the plants in northern part of the island for final familiarisation. I have done Port Hardy, Telegraph Cove and Cole Harbour. Dan is well aware of Port Hardy, he worked up there. And it's a very difficult plant to run because of the pulling off the river. And the variability is quite phenomenal out there. UBID Public Works is involved with the building design layout and is allowed to comment and suggest changes. This relates to the containment, bulk chemical handling, etc. We clarify with Corex and Opus on the possibility of continuing to use the chlorine gas as a disinfectant rather than sodium hypochlorite, as we have functioning equipment. There's various discussions that can go on around that. There's some risks using the chlorine, and there's cost issues using the sodium hypochlorite. That still has to be finalised with them. Then I went on to say that with these requirements, I believe we satisfy the UBID requirement and we provide the OK to KIP to proceed with the design of the building, etc. Submitted by Alan Webb. So, based on that, we had a motion.
Take this back.
Okay.
I see people's eyes glazing over. You can tell he's a technical person, right? Maybe I'll just kind of paraphrase some of that for you so that you understand what's happening. Within the UBID KIP water agreement, UBID has to approve the plant plan before Kensington can proceed to actually build it, because once it's built, UBID will own it and we will be responsible for it. So we're very much involved in the design and construction and then eventually assuming responsibility for this plant. So the meeting that Cleve told you about in his report, where we had representatives from Kensington, Corex, and Opus, who are their engineers, they basically went through what a DAF system is, and we had an opportunity to ask them a number of these kinds of technical questions. And then, of course, Alan has followed up with other users and getting a better handle on the technical side of it, so that as a board, we can make a decision about whether to instruct Kensington to proceed with the plan that they've kind of presented to us. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at. Okay, so do you want to make your motion? Okay.
My motion is to provide Kensington Island Properties with the approval to proceed with the water plant Phase 1 based on the report prepared by myself and the support of the Public Works Committee members in the 16th of this month with the recommendations listed.
So can I have a seconder to approve the construction of this plant? Okay. Cleve, any other discussion from anyone?
Other than I appreciate it, Alan's done all the time, he's spent doing all his research and the report.
I certainly concur with that, and the rest of the Public Works Committee. I mean, it's this technical kind of support that if we didn't have it on our committee, we'd be paying for it.
Yeah, I should acknowledge the other members. Tom couldn't be here with us. I sent it down to him in Florida, and he reviewed it in Florida. And Bill reviewed it down in Bill Ellis reviewed it as well. I came here with Dan, and he reviewed it with Dan. So everybody's had it. I didn't review it with Steve because I know he doesn't want to be locked down so much for technical stuff.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Carried. Okay. The final new business item that we have on our agenda is a recommendation arising out of the Public Works Committee. So I'll ask Cleve if you'd like to make a motion.
I'll make the motion that the board approves a trip for the Public Works Committee and the Superintendent to come up Island and get some first-hand look at these treatment plants.
Seconder?
No, sir, no.
Bruce? Any discussion?
So that's the trip, just so everybody knows, that's the trip up to Port Hardy.
Port Hardy, I'm not sure about Port Hardy because Dan
We're still questioning.
he knows that system, and it doesn't operate under as similar conditions as Coal Harbour Telegraph Cove.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be up to Dan whether he wants to go to Port Hardy or not. But anyway, if they're up there, it's no big deal to go a bit further.
Right. So you're all traveling in one vehicle and it's kind of a day trip?
I would assume so.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. So that concludes the business portion of the meeting. We'll open it now to questions from the floor. And again, I'll ask that if you have more than one question, that you wait until everyone's had a chance to ask their first question. Mary.
Yes, we have a tag board. What I want to know is every month we've come to these meetings and all we've heard is the disasters of the previous administration and board, the things that have gone wrong. TAG campaigned on openness and accountability and that we were going to be involved in decisions. I want to know if the decision regarding this legal matter with the other people involved, how we're all tied together, is that going to be made by the board in private, or are you going to allow the community to be involved in what's going on?
The board will make that decision.
And I'd like to point out that you sent a letter, and it's on my blog, February of this year, asking the previous board to do the same thing I'm asking for you to do now. You're not being accountable, you're not being open and honest with this community.
Well, I don't know what I can say to you, Mary. It's unfortunate that you feel that way, but the board are the people that are elected and mandated with the authority to make these kinds of decisions.
I have another question for when I can ask it, please, after somebody else.
Susan.
Yes, you were talking about having volunteers to do this work on the fire thing, and I was just wondering what provisions are being made with volunteers who are not covered by workers' compensation. Will our insurance in the Union Bay Improvement District cover any injuries or happenings that might take place?
We'll let Bruce answer that.
I've had discussions with our insurance agent about that because I was concerned. And we are covered for the actions of volunteers because, of course, we have a volunteer fire department. So if they cause injury or damage to a third party, we're covered. but it isn't possible to get coverage for the injuries to themselves. So I'm going to be preparing waivers for each of those volunteers to sign if they want to participate in helping with that construction.
So if they're injured on the construction, they'll have no comeback to
That's
the
right.
in the district?
No.
Yes.
Thank you.
John?
I'm of the opinion that our community would be very well served if Mr. Jolliffe, our district advisor, or whatever his position is, address the community for the first time in a number of years with regard to the progress of the KIP development. I'm sure that the board here has put in many hours of it. I'd like to really have Mr. Jolliffe explain to us the CBRD's position, and more specifically his position in advancing this issue. And I just wondered whether the board would support that and contact Mr. Jolliffe and organize at the earliest possible time a meeting with the community to explain those actions and where we are with the programs.
I can't speak for the whole board, but I would think that we would probably be quite fine with asking if you would do that. Certainly people from the community could ask him to do it as well. But yeah, no, we would certainly support that.
I have, and not certainly procrastinated.
The question is, would the board be willing to, I guess, encourage Bruce Jolliffe to meet with the community to talk about Kensington? Okay, Linda?
Does he not meet the community once a month or once every few months anyway? I thought he does something
I
like
have
that.
no idea. Yes.
I have a question
Bill.
for Ann Alcott. On the usage of the fire chief's vehicle, I'm under the impression that he's not a real active fire chief because he lives in Comox, right? And he takes that vehicle back from here to his home in Comox and uses it as a vehicle to come back. But in most instances here, we have an acting fire chief, right?
Right. Yeah.
And why does that acting fire chief not have access to that vehicle? Because if he's just administrator, mostly, then why would he need a vehicle in Comox?
That's right, yeah.
And why does not the acting fire chief have that vehicle?
And we're dealing with that issue, and in our negotiations with Mark right now, and the administrator might want to speak to that a little bit, because she does...
Well, I was just thinking it'd be more cost effective if it was here and not in Comox. And maybe used for other things other than for fire purposes.
Yes, and it has been recognized, so yes, we are aware of that and dealing with it.
Well, it's a good thing to bring up.
Yeah.
For a point of clarity, he is the duty officer during the week, so he comes into Union Bay every morning and spends half a day and then returns home. So during the week, he is the assigned duty officer.
But when he's back there in Comox, and we have a fire here,
Yes.
he's not the first guy to show
Off
up.
hours.
He's off hours.
Yes.
So why is that truck out there when the acting fire chief should actually have it?
We're aware of the situation.
Yeah.
Bob?
You know, I was watching TV and they had Langford and all the areas down there, and they pointed out the growth and taxes, you know. And the more I thought about it, I just think we're heading to hell in a handbasket. What Kensington proposes to build is not what anybody can afford anymore. It's totally against the demographic that's going to happen. And I just want to think there's going to be, less money and more problems. Why should we gallop to hell? Like, financially, it's an unworkable situation. We're never going to win this.
Do you have a question?
And my question is whether, as a community, we should maybe accept that philosophical thought that things might be drastically different 20 years from now than they are now. Because that's not so much a question. But I just saw the numbers on the TV. The development takes money out of your pocket, you know, and
We all know that.
you know, we all know that.
Yeah.
So I don't know why, maybe we should drag our feet on everything, you know. But what do I know? Just when I saw it on TV, the taxes, and I just know it is not sustainable.
Just
Young
in
kids can't
reaction
afford
to
it.
your comment about taxes and growth, in Union Bay, the UBID portion of taxes has not increased for 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's good. I'm not complaining.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just
No,
thinking
that's
things
fine.
are going to be different, and I'm wondering all day if we're aware of it.
No.
Enough, you know.
Dennis?
On the water, the transfer of the water license.
Yes.
If the regional district is responsible, if it's transferred and the regional district becomes responsible for providing water, and we find that because Kensington's going to need a whole lot more water, wouldn't the regional district then become responsible to provide that water, even if they had to put in a pipeline to Hallmark site?
Well, the way that it works is that the government issues water licenses, and UBID currently has 2 water licenses. We have one water license for the actual water in Langley Lake, and another license to have a dam and to store that water. What transferring the water license to CBRD would do would mean that the CBRD would then control the source of our water. They're not controlling all of the distribution, so it wouldn't be the plant, it wouldn't be all the pipes, it wouldn't be any of those things that go into getting water to your house. Okay. What part of the proposal is that once CBRD has that water license, then they would charge us for the water. Okay. Like a bulk water kind of charge on top of what we now charge you for distribution of the water. Okay. In the board's view, there is absolutely nothing in it for us to give up our water license. If Langley Lakes runs out of water, or we don't have enough water for whatever development there is, or I don't know, whatever happens, yeah, then we're into a whole new ballgame, and it would depend on the regional water strategy and whatever else might be in
Well, that's
play
what
at
I was
that
wondering
time.
about. If that were the case, wouldn't they then have to provide the water? If they,
Well,
because they have the region.
Well, they wouldn't have to necessarily,
No.
but it would probably require some kind of a conscious decision from UBID about joining the regional water strategy. Sure.
We started doing some initial studies on Langley Lake, and it's very preliminary, but it's indicated what's flowing over the dam right now is what we use in the water. You know, in a couple of days, what flows over the dam we use in the water. So if that issue came to that, the next issue would be to raise the dam. Now there's money, you need money to do that. So I don't see us being short of water. And as Cleve indicated earlier, that water is an upwelling water. It's not just the water running down off the land. It's coming up from, so it's glacial type water coming from underground.
There won't be a glacier. Maybe we dig down deeper.
No.
Mary?
The reason you're raising the parcel tax is $10, that's because what? You're short of money? We have no money?
I'm not saying that,
Well, I'm just wondering, why are the parcel taxes being raised?
because we're needing to talk about capital planning here, and we need to set aside some money for some capital infrastructure, particularly regarding water.
Okay?
Right now, if we had a major water line break and we had to dig up, say, a block of road and replace pipes, we don't have enough money in our capital fund to pay for that.
Exactly what I was getting at. So the problem that I see is that if we don't have a change in the board here, moving forward, there's no guarantee. You can't tell me that you're not going to do the same thing the other board did, where they spent money and then just walked away. If you don't do something about it, then I have no reason to believe that this board won't do the exact same thing. Can you tell me you won't?
No, so what is it you think we should do?
I think that you should do what is best for the community. You should let the community decide about major issues.
That's what they...
No, it's not happening.
To do that.
You're elected, I wasn't even speaking to you, I was speaking to the chair.
Just hang on here. I'm still not clear.
I'm concerned you're going to let this money go. These people spent $150,000 of the taxpayers' money, and now you're talking about the taxpayers putting money back. You need to do something about the money.
Okay, No, just let me answer this. The costs that have been incurred for legal matters is a totally separate issue than the money that we're trying to collect for capital expenditures down the road.
But it's money for the improvement district. It's still all in the same pot. It's the improvement district. I just want, how do I know that you're not going to do the same thing the other board did?
Well, you're just going to have to wait and see what the decisions are, aren't you?
But we haven't seen anything yet.
No. Okay, well, I don't know how to respond to that, Mary, because no, it's not up to you to respond to it, Chair. Thank you. No,
Hey.
no,
Yeah.
this is between the board.
You don't.
All I can say is that we have a strategic plan, we have a budget, we are working away at issues. You're just going to have to wait and see.
Have another question?
No, somebody else.
Okay, I'll wait till somebody else asks theirs.
One question I have is, does the treatment plant go ahead or after the reservoir? Or is the reservoir going to be added to?
The reservoir is not a question. I mean, the reservoir,
Yes.
that could stay the same as it is right now until we go to phase 2. When we build phase 2, then a new reservoir will be built up by the lake. So the water will be purified up there and then flow down the hill as purified water.
If you do a gray water or a purple line, the gray water from the lake?
No, they'll be using, from what I understand, Arctic plans to be pumping the sewage water up to the sewage treatment plant, which will be up the top of his property somewhere, and treating it, and then that water will be coming back down to that. That's the
Is that water that they're the water from the waste treatment plant? Would it be coming into the old part of town too, or just to the new property?
Just the new property.
Just the new property this point in time.
John?
Alan, the approval that the board has given to the plan, as I understand it, will that trigger commencement of actual work on this now?
It gives him a release to start doing the design. The ball's in his court.
Do you think it's his intention to start promptly?
I can't answer to that. Can't answer to that. Well, I know we told him we're clearing our decks, so that we're not holding him up.
Good.
We proceed.
Thank you.
Mary?
I have a question for Alan, please. I don't pretend to understand all your technical, the figures and stuff. When you said 350 gallons a minute, and you said that was for 250 houses?
No, that's for 850 houses.
Sorry, yes, added on to our existing. So if Kensington has approval for 500 houses, then that's not going to meet the need, is it?
Well, that's where they'll have to incorporate the second phase.
So it's going to be done in phases?
That's what we understand.
Okay.
Susan?
Well, you said that you have taken your stand on the water not being turned over, water license not being turned over. But regional district, if they don't accept that, then is KIP dead in the water?
No.
Or waterless?
No, no. There've been a long list of conditions that needed to be met before Kensington can go ahead with their development permits. This water license issue is one of 6 or 7 items, and it's the last one that we need to work our way through. So,
But until it's you worked your way through it, Kensington will not be proceeding.
well, we're not sure on that. I mean, there are a number of fronts that we're working on in terms of with Kensington, with CBRD, with the government to resolve the issue.
Do you have
And we don't know.
Do you have an alternate plan in place to take and put that water filtration system in, should this not take and get ahead?
How many questions?
We're not planning at this point for Kensington not to proceed. Mary?
Can I just ask you a question? When you were reading out the bylaws and you said you had to read them so many times, the other board never did that. Was everything done wrong when they were doing it? Did they not do it legally? Or is it just that
All I can say
They
is
what?
that
They did.
they did
They
it?
did.
yes.
Oh,
Yeah, but I've been in meetings where they read them twice.
oh, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one more.
Okay.
Did any of this board interfere and have Bob Leary not run? Was he told that it would split the vote?
I think that's an inappropriate question. Any other questions?
I just want to say one thing. It's interesting that for 2 years I went to the previous board and there was nobody there, and now everybody's here and hearing your presentations and how you deal with business. And in all fairness, nobody here who did not attend the other board, Cleveland and Bruce were on the last 2 years, but there was things done legally, and you can be sure of that.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned. I think 30.